Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nate Crespo, your host for today and forever, and welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast, where it is my job to focus on the unique journeys to the law and law school of professionals in the legal field and law students. Let's talk about what we're doing today, because today we have another spectacular guest. She's an Elon University School of Law graduate and currently works as an account manager at Contender and as a law clerk at Luft Tumlin. She has held past positions as a legal intern at BVB National Programs and as the chief symposium editor at Elon University School of Law. Finally, she is the co-host of Lawyer Affirmed. Excited to have her on the podcast today, Mrs. KimberMarie Faircloth. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today? Before going any further, I'd like to say a quick word about the sponsor of this podcast, Rhetoric. Back in episode 25, I had the privilege of having the CEO, Luke Yingling, on the podcast, and ever since that episode, fell in love with the product. Rhetoric takes user briefs and motions and compares them against the text of opinions written by judges to identify ways to tailor their arguments to better persuade the judges handling their cases. Rhetoric's focus on persuasion and helps users find new ways to improve their odds of success through more persuasive arguments. Know more, win more. I was able to see a demo of the product, and its cutting-edge technology and fascinating features make for a product I am proud to sponsor, and further shows the new digital era the field of law has been entering thus far on my journey doing this podcast. If you decide to book a demo, let them know Nate sent you. Be sure to check them out in the show notes below or at userhetoric.com. One word, userhetoric.com. Now, back to the show.
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fantastic today, KimberMarie. It is beautiful outside. I love it so much. I'm soaking up that sun. I feel fantastic. I look fantastic. No, I mean, listen, that's a subjective opinion, but that's how I feel. But KimberMarie, before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I grew up in North Carolina. I always wanted to go out of state, which looking back was probably it definitely was not the best decision that I could have made in terms of undergrad, but you live and learn. I went to College of Charleston and wanted to be a female Indiana Jones, and went on my first dig and realized I did not want to do that full time as much as I love the subject. So then I pursued anthropology, which was a good fit. Um, my life kind of took a turn towards the end of college, so I came back home and worked for 2 years, and that's also when COVID happened, and I had a lot more free time. And the job I was doing, even though it was like a great company, I did not want to be a leasing agent for the rest of my life. So since I wasn't commuting for a while there, I decided to sign up for the LSAT. And my approach was, I'm going to take it once, see where I can get in on the score that I get, and if I can get scholarships. And if it works out, it works out. And that's what led me to Elon. And I just graduated this past December, sat for the February bar, found out I passed at the beginning of April, and here we are.
Well, that's fantastic news. Congratulations on congratulations on graduating. Congratulations on passing the bar. Those are big achievements in the legal world. I know too much. I've talked to many people who've talked about their experience getting through law school and passing that bar as all the way back, episode 2. I'm pulling this out of my memory right now. But I remember Ray Weiss talking about him passing the bar. It was like Atlas lifting the rock off his shoulders. That's how he described it. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that everyone else feels that way. But let's go back, all the way back. College of Charleston, you graduate in 2018. And what I love so much when I was looking at your profile, when I was writing some facts down, getting ready for this episode, that this is very much an epitome of what we talk about here on this podcast, that there is no straight path. There's only your own unique
Yeah.
path. You took 3 years between undergraduate and law school. So simply put, why'd you go to law school?
So when working as a leasing agent, great company, like I said, that was like my first big girl job. So I was just happy to have benefits and like a 401k. And I miss having a 401k, I will say that. I still have one, but that's a different subject that's not relevant here. And I just realized that I was missing half of what I wanted. So like, yeah, it's a great company, but I'm not really doing work each day that I feel fulfilled in. And like I could find moments of joy in each day, but there was also like a lot of frustration and just not feeling fulfilled. And law school had always been like an option in my mind, but I am not one of those people that like came out of the womb knowing that they wanted to be a lawyer. That is not me. The more that I looked into it, the more I realized that being a lawyer, you have to be a good writer, you have to like research, you have to like editing, like all this stuff. And those are all my skill sets as well as my interests. So when the pandemic hit and I had more time on my hands, I was like, well, it's now or never. So I just decided to go for it and kind of took it a day at a time and ended up at Elon. And it was a very good decision, yes.
So you end up at Elon. It's
Yeah.
2021, the first year of law school. People love it. People hate it. Some people say it's the best year of their life. How was it for you?
It was not the best year of my life, I will say that. I'm trying to think. 2L year was worse than 1L year. I think I read, what's the book? It's a classic law student book where he takes you through each of the different years. And there was a saying where like they're the first year they scare you to death. The second year they work you to death. And then the third year, I forget the rest of the saying. But those first two are very accurate. I think 1L year, it was just scary because especially if you don't grow up around lawyers who can kind of tell you how it's going to be, there's like a lot of jargon in the legal world as it is. And then in law school, that world is being opened up to you. And within law school, it's like a different approach to, I think, teaching than you're going to get in undergrad. So it's just new and unfamiliar. And so that's kind of where the nerves come in there. By the end of 1L year, you pretty much figure out what you need to do. At least I did. I was able to figure out studying wise what worked for me. I know that that might be different for a lot of other people, and that's okay. 2L year is where things got not great, I will say. So yeah, 1L year is just scary.
So you talked about figuring out how to study. What ways did you figure out this is the way I want to study? This is the system that works for me.
So I think the biggest thing that helped was going to the professors and like talking to them, going to their office hours. I feel like students don't necessarily utilize those as much as they could, because most professors will straight up tell you like, here's what the students that succeed in my class do usually, and here's the ones that don't. This is what happens with them. And then when it comes to figuring out if studying a certain way is working for you, the only way you can figure that out is through practice questions and multiple choice. And the good news with me, I looked out because Elon is really big on like practical skills and getting experience in some way. So a lot of the professors were not, they would employ traditional Socratic methods, but they were also big on like, here's a practice midterm. Please go do it. If you do it, I will review it and give you feedback. And it was optional, but like there are a lot of other schools that don't do that. And so if you are at one of those schools that doesn't really provide that, like definitely prioritize practice essays and exams because that's how you figure out if you're retaining material or not. And that's how I figured out if my studying methods were working. And they would often change from class to class. So,
So I want to go back a little bit because
yeah.
before you ever went to law school, you held many, many jobs. And I'm going to list them all off right now because I think that'd be fun. So you were a contributor at Oblique Fitness Magazine, then a staff writer at Siston Yard Media, then you were an intern at Lucky Dog, then after that, a summer associate at AmeriCorps Vista. I'm going to keep going here. You were also a participant startup at Team Henry and Reba Huge Foundation. That was like a run, I think, I believe. I saw that. That was very cool. And a participant at Enterprise Estonia, which is interesting. But what is that? I need to know.
So the Huge E Foundation was a 2-week program where, so this was when I was at College of Charleston, and it was a result of being a part of their student incubator for 1 semester. My team was, it was 3 of us. It ended up being 4 of us, but that's a different story. Our team got chosen for this foundation's competition. Sorry, I'm a little rusty on explaining what this is. And so what they do, it's 2 weeks, and it's students from Charleston, Nebraska, and Estonia, which is like a really weird mix of geographic locations, but it's because the Hugie Foundation, that is where they had their connections. And the whole goal was to bring these students together, do a pitch competition where each of them are working on their business idea. You're working with mentors over the course of 2 weeks, and at the end, you present it. And if you win, you get money to go towards your venture. We did not place in that, and that's fine, but that was like a really great traveling experience and like entrepreneurship experience for me. So that's where the anything Estonia related comes from that. That was just one of the things we had to do as a part of that fast-paced incubator, if you will.
I mean, no, that sounds like a fantastic experience, but we're not done. You're at the Courier, Tribune, you were a contributing writer, then you became a freelance writer. You were an administrative assistant at the law firm of Abigail E. People, so that's some legal experience before you even got to law school. And then, of course, you were a leasing specialist at Kane Residential for those 2 years. Now, with all those experiences, how did it sort of shape your perspective throughout law school? How did it help you? How did it hurt you?
Yeah. Well, to be completely transparent, so like a lot of those, were freelancing. So some of them were like one-off projects. My longest project has been with the Courier Tribune. I started writing for them when I was actually in high school because they had like a mentorship program. And so I just want to throw that out there. But those are experiences that I have had. I would say how they've helped me, particularly in the writing realm, is understanding that writing is a process. You're not going to sit down and write something perfect the first time necessarily. Sometimes it happens, but it's very rare when it does. And in law school, that's very true in a lot of different ways. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be the perfect student the second you get there. You have to trial and error, put yourself out there, get feedback. And just over a course of different iterations, you kind of figure out how you are as a law student and how you want to be as a lawyer. So and also obviously just like the practical experience of writing and like editing and getting feedback has been very helpful as well.
So you said something there that piqued my interest. You
Yeah.
said putting yourself out there is very important. Can you talk about how important putting yourself out there is? And I think
Yeah.
the additional question to that would be the importance of networking, because networking is pretty much putting yourself out there. So like a little smushed together combined question, talk about the importance of those things.
Yeah, so I was a first generation law student, meaning that no one in my immediate family went to law school. And I am very much like a researcher. I have so many lists on my laptop and in my notebooks just from random subjects that I research. It's kind of weird. But I like talking to people, even though I'm introverted, and like getting feedback on ideas or questions. So when I started law school, I just kind of naturally started reaching out to people and trying to hear about their legal journey, any advice they might have. And then my summer before my 2L year, I was interning for California Lawyers for the Arts. And there was one lawyer I got in touch with, and the biggest piece of advice he gave me was like, if there's one thing you walk away understanding is like you need to put yourself out there. Like if you're interested in a subject, write about it, blog about it, podcast about it, like do something so that way when employers are like looking you up online, it's very obvious that you love this subject. And that's also a great thing about kind of becoming a lawyer in the digital age is because you can build this like digital trail of all your interests and experiences. Whereas in the past, you may have had like 30 minutes to try and explain all of that to someone in an interview. Now people can kind of just go and find it online if you're in the running for a job or something, if that makes sense. So putting yourself out there to me is just pursuing what you're interested in and constantly finding ways to learn more so you can share those interests and not just keeping it for yourself.
I mean, I could attempt to disagree, but I actually cannot. I can't disagree. I have to agree on all counts there. I think it's just so important to put yourself out there. I put myself out there every day. We're putting ourselves out there right now on this podcast. I just think it's so important in terms of finding those relationships, finding those people, finding those interests that will help you. And whatever your goals are, whatever you aspire to be, putting yourself out there is usually the first step, the most helpful step, because once you get the ball rolling, it starts to snowball, and then you're moving really fast down the hill, and you got to keep up. But from there, I have to ask about that summer internship at California Lawyers for the Arts. Interesting title. What is going on there?
So they are a nonprofit where they essentially provide legal resources for artists. And there's usually in most major cities where you kind of have more of a concentration of arts in the area, you're going to find one of these nonprofit orgs. And California Lawyers for the Arts, I think, is one of the longer running ones. And the program I worked for, there were two, the Sacramento Mediation Center and then the Arts Arbitration and Mediation Center. And both of those, the Sacramento Mediation Center is really open for anyone. It's not just arts related. And then the other one, Arts Arbitration and Mediation Center, they are primarily focused on just art related subjects. But basically, for those programs, I was intaking clients, talking to them about whatever legal issue they were facing, and really just doing the intake process and then passing that along to my supervisor. And we would get to observe, mediations in progress or just kind of trying to think of the best way to describe it. Really just like observing our supervisor kind of help these people either solve their own problem or start the mediation process. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that you can solve a lot of problems before they become legal issues just through communicating. But sometimes you need a little help with that, and mediation is really good for that. And so that's really what they do and do it really well.
So how was your experience there?
I loved it. It was I wish I had had more work actually, because it was like a part-time role. But it was fun getting to be client facing. So I did talk to a lot of people, most of them, very stressed about the issues they were facing. And then I also got to observe like workshops that CLA had done in the past because they had like an archive that interns could use. So I would just go through and watch all the ones that were on my favorite subjects, and that was just like a really great learning experience.
So from there, I have to ask, talking of experiences, getting some time in the field, some experience in the field, do you indeed know what you want to do with the law? And if you do, how did you figure that out?
I am still figuring that out, to be honest with you. I feel like there will be moments where I get like an ounce of clarity and then something happens and it's like, maybe not. Um, my goal going into law school, like my biggest goal was to graduate with a job lined up, and that didn't happen. I'm also a big believer in things happen for a reason, like there's a design to everything. So as what's the word? As disappointing as it is to not have reached that goal, I know that something will fall into place. And there's a reason that I kind of have this time right now and to just figure things out. I'm going to start rambling if you don't cut me off here soon.
No,
I'm
no,
figuring, I'm figuring things out, as you can see.
of course. I mean, I think that was the best response I could have got. Because
Okay.
for myself, when I was planning to go on law school, like last year, go to law school, and
Mhm.
I was sort of figuring out, okay, like before I get to law school, I should probably figure out what I want to do. So I took like 3 months. I watched all these YouTube videos. I would listen to all these podcasts. I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do? Am I gonna do litigation, transactional? What's going on? And I remember texting a former guest, actually, Nick Ronde, former professional baseball player, now currently at Georgetown Law School. Guy's a genius,
Nice.
guy's amazing. But I'm texting him, I'm like, hey man, do you know what you want to do? And he's about to go in his third year. He's like, nah, I have no idea. And I was like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? So it's a shocking revelation. And I was like, oh my God, I just spent all this time trying to figure things out when I actually don't have to do any of it. And what I've learned throughout this podcast, and I would think you would agree, but in terms of figuring out what you want to do, usually it's through experience, it's through actually doing the job. Like, yeah, I'd love to do litigation, and then I could go and try it and be like, wow, this absolutely sucks. I'd never want to do something like this. So it's just something like that that it's just important for people to hear. It's important for me to hear because they don't have to
Yeah.
put too much pressure on themselves and sort of just figure out while sitting in a chair, what am I going to do? Usually it's the experiences that help out.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of like a spectrum of responses, and people either they usually fall into one of two extremes. Either they say you need to know what you want to do and try and get all those experiences so your resume looks amazing and you get that dream job. And I mean, that is a valid path. I'm sure that's worked for some people. But the other extreme is that there's a lot of students that don't know what they want to do. They just think that they would be a good lawyer and they're figuring it out as they go, and they do figure it out because a lot of people have done it that way. But there's also like a middle path that I feel like is more helpful to law students to hear, and that is pursue what you're interested in. Like when I started law school, I loved art. I still love art, film, anything related to copyrights, cultural heritage. So I just pursued opportunities that allowed me to dive into those subjects deeper, but I also was open to new opportunities. So like, and you see that in my resume, that year before 2L during that summer, I interned for CLA. And then the next year, I did an internship for BBB national programs, and that was data privacy related. And I never would have like predicted having that opportunity, when law school started. So pursue your passions, but also be open to other opportunities.
See, I love the framework you use in here. And I have to ask, did you always have that framework sort of that, things happen for a reason? I've been reading, so Tony Albrecht, who just posted this past Tuesday, which probably won't be this past Tuesday for most people. It is May 6th today. People will probably be listening to this in like June or something. I have no idea at this point. But he had sent me The Alchemist. I've never read The Alchemist before. I think it's like the
Mm,
best book ever. I'm in love with
it's
it. It's
great.
so good. It's amazing. And it's that kind of framework that things happen for a reason. You have the good and bad
Yeah.
omens, all that fun stuff. So how did you sort of adopt that framework into your life?
Well, I mean, I always grew up, and I don't, if this is like too deep or too personal, you can just tell me to shut up. But like
No, no, please go deep and personal.
I've always believed in God, I never really had like a very strict religious upbringing or anything. I didn't really go to church much growing up. And then I converted to Catholicism my first year of being in undergrad, which is not usually something you hear that people do in their first year of college. But just that there's been like a lot of studying. I've been doing a theology and like design. And I just think everywhere you look, if it's physics, if it's biology, if it's, the law, there's kind of like these rules that exist that kind of keep our existence as it is. And it just makes sense. Like it makes sense in its own way, even if we can't fully explain it. And that does give me comfort, like in seasons like I'm in now, when things are not going as fast as I want. I know that there is a design working its way as it should be, um, even if I like don't fully understand it. So I think that's kind of been the evolution of my thinking and like my approach to life.
Oh,
I hope that answered your
oh
question.
my goodness. Speaking my language right now, I have to say, because I myself am a philosophy major, so
Nice.
a lot of stuff that you're talking about, I resonate with a ton. I learn about in class. I read on my own as well. But I think when you talked about this, the certain design, the things that make the things in this universe work, like the laws of physics, like
Yeah,
that sort of, it's crazy when you look at it, that these are the
it is.
governing principles of everything, every single thing on this planet, this is what it's governed by. And it's just crazy to think about those things. I was actually watching a video the other day, and it was sort of the when like a bee stings someone, like their bee sting itself, like the process and design, it's so like complex.
Yes.
There's so much going on, and it's like
It's
entering the
wild.
form, like and it was just freaky. So I had to go on YouTube and look up other cool designs within insects or animals like that. So I see we have a lot in common here, just for the
Yes, it sounds like it.
when I look at these things, I'm like, oh my God, it freaks me out, but I'm fascinated by it because it just shows how puny we are sometimes. Like there's all these other
Honestly.
things going on and all these complex mechanisms within the universe.
Mm.
It's a little too much sometimes, but I love it. I love it so much.
It's it's both horrifying and beautiful, but like I feel like that is the human experience.
It's everything is a blessing and a curse. It's just a matter of the way you look at it. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about your podcast because you are the co-host of The Lawyer Affirmed, and you started that in your second year of law school. Why'd you start that podcast, and what is it about?
So Lawyer Affirmed, and that is still at Elon. There's a new group of students working on it now. The podcast I have been working on my own, The Sailor's Daughter, is like a personal project that I started my last year of law school. But Lawyer Affirmed was initially a part of the first generation law student society, and it was started by a former law student, and we were just trying to restart it with his mentorship. And the goal was to do exactly like what you're doing, like provide a resource where we're talking to lawyers about their legal journey and how they got where they were and what their advice would be to first generation students. So that was why we did that. And then towards 3L year, people are gearing up to graduate, figuring out life after school. And so we just decided to kind of like pass the torch to the next class. And so that's what they're doing. It remains at Elon, but it was a lot of fun and it was very educational, both on a personal level and I think for anyone who listens to those episodes.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, and I'd have to say I did not steal your idea. I promise.
You know,
I would
that
give
was
you credit if I did, but I had no idea about it. But now I do.
no.
So
It's
you know what? I'll give you the credit. I got this from you, exactly.
no.
But you talked about how that person that had started the podcast was mentoring you through the podcast, giving you all the logistics and such that you need in order to ensure podcast success. But let's talk about mentorship. How important has mentorship been for you in your career so far?
It's been incredibly important, and that is, I think, mentorship is also like the hardest aspect, I think, for law students to find and develop and maintain. And the reason that is because it's not all on them. Like if we can say, like when you're studying, it's all on you to do your studying. But when you're a part of a mentorship relationship, it's a relationship. So it's a two-way street. Um, and from prior experiences before law school, I feel like I was actually planning on writing a LinkedIn post about this. So thank you for reminding me about that.
No
I
problem.
feel like I've seen some people who have really great intentions, right? Like I mean no ill will towards them, but mentorship is also new to them. So they may not fully understand like how that dynamic works for them either. And that can be really like not great for the mentee if you're also figuring things out as you go. Now, obviously, everyone has to start from somewhere, but when you meet a mentor who's like not leading the conversation, they're not asking you questions, they're just kind of there so that way they can say that they're a mentor to someone, that's not ideal. And that doesn't really help anyone in the long run. But ever since law school started, I feel like lawyers are very focused. We all tend to be kind of like type A, and we're good at asking questions. There have been a few times where I've met people where I'm like, nah, I don't know why you're a mentor, but I think that they have very good intentions and they want to help. It's just the communication part that can be really hard. So my advice to any law students who are working with a mentor or they want to find one, I would say think about try and find people who are in positions that you would like to be in one day as a starting point. Figure out like what did they do in their path to that position that mirrors my path or doesn't, and is it necessary that I do exactly what they did? And then just kind of reach out to people and say, I need help in this area of my life. I'm looking for direction, and you never know who you'll meet. But also don't be afraid to kind of and not this is going to sound cold, but don't be afraid to like end a mentorship relationship if it's not working out for you. I had one really great lady. This was back from undergrad. I admired her so much. She was the one that was like, I actually just don't have the bandwidth to be a mentor right now and to commit to the communication that this would require. And so that was a rejection, and that's fine. You just move on and keep going on with it. And the same if the tables were turned. I'm sure she would have moved on with her life if I said that I don't have the bandwidth for it. So talk to a lot of people, figure out who you click with personality wise and communication style wise, and then go from there. And, for the people that you don't mesh super well with, which is very human, there's nothing like wrong with that. Just respectfully bow out and say, I don't have the bandwidth for this, but I would love to stay in touch. And that's like really all you have to say.
Yeah, I think you make three great points there. First of them is always got to reach out to people. Always be willing to reach out to people. It's not that scary. The worst thing they can do is just not answer you at all. And that's really not that
Yeah.
bad. Sometimes they'll leave you on red, but that's even better than nothing because at least they acknowledge you, they know you exist, and they're
Yes.
acknowledging your existence. And as always on this podcast, as a philosophy major, I always try to keep my philosophy within me and not talk about it. But you have pushed my hand, and I need to talk about philosophy now. Brings me back. Machiavelli, one of my favorite authors ever. One of my favorite quotes he has. I forget what chapter it's in. I should memorize it so then it would be even cooler. But he always talks about how the great princes of our time, Alexander the Great and Caesar, and they all learned from each other. They all copied each other. And just that small sentiment right there can be universal against pretty much any industry, like you said. Whatever position you want, find the guy who's the best at it, find the guy who's in the position that you want to be in, and just whatever he does, try to copy it as best as you can. Put your own twist on it, put your own personal twist on it. But usually, wherever you want to get somewhere, you just got to find the people who are there already and go from there. I love that quote so much, by the way. And finally, saying no. Saying no is so important. Having that ability to
Yes.
know if something fits right or something doesn't fit right, because time is so immensely valuable, and especially with lawyers, their time are very valuable. Sometimes, for most lawyers, if around the billable hours, their time is actually valuable. Like it actually has
Yes.
monetary value. So it's important to be asking a lot of questions. I know you said that lawyers love to ask questions. I love to ask questions. I probably ask way too many questions. That's why I made a podcast so I can ask questions. But finally, I want to talk about what you do now. You're a law clerk at Tuft Tumlin. I hope I said that. Did I say that right? I feel like I said.
Luft Tumlin, yeah.
Okay. Well, how was that experience so far? How has it been?
So I came across, and this is another kind of more like part-time project-based opportunity. One of my mentors from school, shout out to Professor Levine, thank you. He had a connection that he's known for a while who was looking for someone to kind of just help with like a few research projects. So that's what I've been doing whenever he just needs added help or extra help here and there, he'll send it my way. And then, yeah, sorry, my brain decided to stop working mid-sentence on
No, it's
that.
all right. It's all right. It happens to the best of us. I've been doing
Yeah.
this. I haven't been doing this for that long. I was gonna say I've been doing this for a long time. I really haven't. It's only been like 6.5 months. But sometimes I have the brain fart, and it's totally all right because it happens all the time to me, quite honest. And I had written down that it said I know it's Luft. It is Luft. I said Tuft because that's what I typed out. No one
It
corrected me.
happens to the best of us. It's okay.
Exactly, exactly. But let's talk about interesting opportunities. You're the account manager at Contender. I know Contender very well. We had Tony Albrecht on Tuesday, which is
Yeah.
not Tuesday for people who are listening to this now, but he's the creative director and founder. So how's that experience been?
It's been really great. I connected with Tony at the end of last year, and at the time I was worried because the big clock in my brain was counting down to graduation, and I had not reached my goal of having a job. And he had seen some of my posts on LinkedIn, and I've seen his. I mean, he's really great at branding, and so I would see his posts like if not every day, every other day. And so we just started chatting about that. And he was like, if you need extra work or something, just let me know. And of course, I started bar study, so that didn't happen immediately. But then over the past month or so, we reconnected on that. And yeah, when did I start? This is the beginning of my third week. So 2 full weeks there. And it's been really fun. They have a great team and a great mission. And the more that I'm there, the more I would like to stay there. So I want the business to keep growing because I really like it.
Heard things have been going well. I talked to Tony
Yes.
often, so he's been telling me what's going on. But in terms of what you're actually, what do you actually do as the account manager?
Yeah, so I like client interviews, which I'm still training on. So like I feel weird saying that I do it when I'm still being trained on how to do this. But essentially it's like client interviewing, touching base with them and how they're showing up online and their digital presence, which is how we refer to it at Contender, and just like stay up to date on their lives, their jobs, what they want to put out in the world and how they want to do that, and then we make that happen. And our goal is to help them make connections. It's not so much about how many followers they have, it's really trying to help them create as accurate of a digital presence online as they do in real life. And so to do that, you have to know your client really well. So it's really just a lot of connecting with them so we can help them connect with people online.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's one of the things I talk about because I don't look at. I mean, obviously, I can't not look at the numbers of this podcast and what it does.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of what I really care about is just those, 5 to 10 people that find the podcast and, they may be, high status people, very wealthy, whatever it may be. But there's 5 to 10 people that will connect with me and that will make a real impact on my life. That's all I need. That's all I need. I've
Yeah.
found a couple of them already. But, the big numbers, they can get as big as they want as long as I have those couple people who I can connect with. It's always amazing.
Well, and I should clarify because as anyone knows who's like tried their hand at the social media game, regardless of platform, like the numbers is a part of the game. Like there's no way around that. That's just the way that it works. So there is a part of that where it behooves you to pay attention. I think in today's iteration of social media, we're starting to see people are getting tired of just focusing on numbers. And how many times have we heard success stories of influencers or businesses who stayed true to their message and their brand, and then they hit success? Maybe it took them a year, maybe it took them 2 years, but they stayed true to their interests and their passions and their values, and it ultimately worked out in their favor versus those people who found success through like buying followers or not being honest about themselves and their identity. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all know that one company or whatever that lied their way to
The
the top.
YouTube clickbait.
Yes, yes. And so, like, you can go that path. And I'm sure that I mean, you may make money quicker that way, but there's also a lot of people who want to be authentic online. They want their digital presence to be how they are in real life. And I think that's honorable and admirable and how I think social media should work organically. But unfortunately, in the game we're playing right now, that does kind of lead to you have to take more time and consistency to build that up. Um, yeah, I'm gonna stop there. That's like the best way I can explain the way that I see like the social media environment. Numbers are important, but in my personal opinion, they shouldn't be so important that you're prioritizing them at the expense of your values. I'll
Oh,
leave it there.
yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's a perfect representation of what people should look to do when they're on social media. Be as th authentic as humanly possible. Just like I try to. I put myself all on here. This is 100% Nate. I'm not holding nothing back. But, like before, we were talking about, intelligent design and all that stuff. I'm interested in that stuff. I'll talk about it on here.
Yeah.
I've come on here. I've talked about crazier things, I think, especially with the episode with Tony. We got a little crazy. But that's just because it's me. That's just me. I can't do anything about that. But KimberMarie, we are down to our last 5 questions. And the first of the 5 questions, I've been asking this the past couple episodes. The law is on the precipice of this new era. People are moving more towards technology. The old wigs of the traditions, they're good people. I'm not saying they're bad people, but they are somewhat traditional. They still use fax machines somehow. Get an email. No, I'm kidding. But everything is moving in a certain direction. People are moving AI technologies. People are using new software products. So this is more or less the tech stack question, but what does your tech stack look like in your daily life? It could be as simple as possible or as complex as you want to make it.
Oh goodness. So like what is my daily routine with technology is kind of like what you're asking?
Yeah, so like what are you using on a daily basis? So like for example, like I like to use Grammarly. I'm always using Grammarly, and that's sort of a part of my tech stack. Zoom would be a part of my tech stack. I always have to use Zoom, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you bring this up because I'm like at heart, I'm a Luddite. Like I wish that I could not have any technology at all, but that's not the world that I was born into. So with that being said, I am constantly sharing film reviews on Instagram, so I'm gonna shamelessly brag about that in the hopes that I can, hey, get more followers for my numbers on there. I know I'm being a hypocrite right now. And then Slack, Zoom, Gather has been a fun tool to learn how to use. I use all of this for Contender. What else? LinkedIn, obviously. I love LinkedIn. That's kind of where my interest for social media and branding came from. Um, and that's also where I've learned the importance of balancing your competitiveness for numbers with being authentic, because LinkedIn, I think, is much better at allowing people to tell stories than other platforms, which is why I love it so much. So there's that. What else? I'm constantly on IMDb researching movies. I don't know if this is the answer you wanted. Google Calendar. I have like 3 or 4 different calendars and none of them are synchronized. So it actually makes my day way more complicated than it needs to be. Yeah, I think that's about it.
No, listen, those were perfect answers. That's what I like to hear. I love all
Yeah.
those things. But the Instagram account, you can shamelessly plug it right now. What is the at?
My at is KimberMarie James. So it's my first and middle name, KimberMarie James. And I do really, to me, they're cringy, but I don't think it's not like I'm dancing on camera. There's nothing wrong with dancing on camera. That's just like, I can't dance. So that would be horrifying. But I basically just do like tiny little film reviews and like film history videos. And it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun. If it's something you're interested in, you're doing it and you're passionate about it, then
It's
it's fun. Who cares?
Right. It's like a nice way to, it's also been nice to have something separate from focusing on like the legal industry. As much as I love being in that world, it's nice to have something where I'm just kind of like playing around with this. If it works out and it grows, great. If it doesn't, I'm still gonna do it. So, yeah.
That's such a beautiful thing. I love to hear things like that. But fourth to last question, live on the Lawyers in the Making podcast. KimberMarie, what are your book recommendations for people? It doesn't have to be about the law, but it could just be some of your favorite books, something you give a gift to someone.
Hmm. So the first one that comes to mind is going to be Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That is life-changing and everyone should read it. And I think we should honestly have middle schoolers read, not, that's a little too early. Maybe high schoolers read it. And then I'm reading a really good book. We read a lot of books at Contender, which is another reason why I know I'm in the right place. And the one I'm working on now is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guardia. And I am only 50 pages in, and this is probably one of the best, if not the best, personal/professional development books I've ever read. And like I've read a lot, and it is very good. So I highly recommend that. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop at those two.
No, no, do two more. I know you want to.
Two more. What else? I recently read, oh, this one also changed my life. Tony also recommended it. It was the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, I believe. Let me look this up to make sure I'm telling you correctly.
Hmm. This isn't a test. You can cheat.
Yes, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And it is like, I have never felt more seen through a book than I have with that. If you have, and I know you do, just by the fact that you love doing podcasting, anyone who is into creative stuff, which I would say most people are, you need to read this because he's very good at describing resistance and why we procrastinate, and it's very good. And then my fourth one, there's so many good options. I'm gonna do a fiction one. So I'm kind of basic. I love The Great Gatsby. Like, I
Please.
love Fitzgerald, Hemingway, and just The Great Gatsby is just like that pinnacle book from that time, talking about the lost generation and all that. So I have to put that in there, even though it's just a story, but it's so
That's all
good.
right. I mean, hey, listen, sometimes the most cliche things are actually very good. I
Yeah,
read The Great Gatsby in high school. I actually rebought it in college because I just
nice.
wanted to see how it was. I still enjoyed the book. It was very, very good. I know there's the movie as well, which is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it's a little weird because it's like the 1920s, but they're playing like Jay-Z. I was like, what's even
It's very Baz Luhrmann. If you want like a good, authentic Great Gatsby, watch the original movie with, I think, Robert Redford. That is like very authentic Great Gatsby. Yeah,
oh,
you might like that.
I'll have to check it out now since you're telling me. I believe you. But third to last question, what are the types of things you consume, not food, consume on a daily basis, either that be through social media, so LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Reddit, Substack, some people you like to follow on any of the social media platforms that you would recommend to anyone, any podcasts you listen to, anything like that. What's crossing the transom of KimberMarie's brain on a daily basis?
So the first person that comes to mind is Cody Sanchez. She's a business owner, entrepreneur. I love her. Like I just like I want to be her. And I learned so much from all of her videos. I like that I can go on LinkedIn and see where she's worked, which you can't do a lot of the time with people who kind of start these like guru type online businesses. So I like her a lot. And what else? I also love Hearsay Culture. I'm a little biased because that is hosted and founded by my mentor, uh, Professor Dave Levine, and I've just started helping them with their like social media. But they do really great content on the intersection of like technology and culture. So if you're wanting to learn more about that and like the horizon, no, not the horizon. I'm trying to think of like a good way to describe it. They have four different shows. One is hosted by Denise Howell, R&D. Hearsay Culture is hosted by Levine, and then they both co-host together R&D. And they basically just get into the nitty-gritty of things like AI, Bitcoin. I think his latest interview on Hearsay was with Hangman from, oh, not WWE, it's the
Oh,
other one.
wait, Hangman Adam Page? No.
Yes, yes. So they'll have it's not all technology related, but they'll like he was talking to him about being a wrestler, but also how AI might change the profession. And so it was really cool to hear him step back from like just being a wrestler, and kind of give his thoughts on how technology is going to change that industry. And that's literally what their whole show is about. So if you're wanting like to learn something new, but also be interested, you should definitely check this one out.
I mean, genuinely, that's a curveball, honestly, because I'm
It
a
was a really great interview. Yeah.
well, it's a curveball because I'm a very, very big wrestling fan, very, very big.
You'll like it.
I love it. So like, but like Hangman Adam Page was probably the last person I would ever because he's in AEW. It's not WWE.
Oh,
But
sorry. I always
no,
get
no,
it
it's
wrong.
it's totally okay. It's been literally 20 years since there's been two companies competing with each other. But that is like the last name I would ever expect anyone. And the fact he's being interviewed about AI is just totally just throwing me for a whirl right now. I think it's amazing. I gotta listen to that honestly. But second to last question here. You're always working. You got a contender. You're working at. I gotta flip the page over and look so I don't get it wrong. Left Tumlin. But what does an ideal Friday night and Sunday morning look for Kimber Marie?
Mhm. They look very similar, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It's usually filled with either catching up on shows or watching movies. I also love cooking, so usually cooking's involved. And Sunday's a little, I mean, that's more special. I'll start the day off with mass and then do all those other things. I'll just come home and like watch movies and cook, basically. So that's about it.
So what are some
Boring, I guess.
what are some of the no, listen, simplicity is beautiful. What what kind of shows are you watching right now? What are you catching up on? And also, if you had to give me a favorite show you've ever watched, I'd like to hear that too.
Hmm. Hold on, you got to give me a second to think. Well, okay, while I think about my favorite show, I'm currently working through The Sopranos, which I had never seen before. I know. But we're fixing that. Um, it's very good. It's kind of depressing, like to watch a show about a street boss going to therapy about his depression. It's like dark in a way you wouldn't expect, or maybe you would expect it. I don't know. Um, Shows. Again, this is like where I kind of show how basic I can be. I grew up on Real Housewives. Like I have seen every branch of that franchise. And I like it because I don't like drama in my personal life, but I am totally okay with other people having drama in theirs. So like it's nice because I don't know these people. They are more than willing to get paid to show their lives fine. And I don't know. It's like an interesting dynamic. And yeah, I just grew up on it. So I'm kind of used to the craziness. Yeah.
Well, KimberMarie, I'm here to tell you live on this podcast that I myself as well have seen all the Real Housewives before. My mom was a big fan. She actually doesn't watch anymore. She doesn't like it anymore. But back when I was a kid, I'd be sitting on the couch doing whatever, and she'd be watching the Real Housewives. So I know Atlanta, I know New York City. New
Yeah.
Jersey is my favorite. I love Orange County. I know they have a bunch of other new ones that I have no idea about, but I have to say, my heart is at the Real Housewives of New Jersey. It's one of my favorite things
Yes.
ever. I know when she flips the table, it makes me feel
I
amazing.
was just about to reference that
It,
because
it's
like
such
I
an amazing moment.
there are some moments where I think about not watching anymore because it is just very repetitive at this point, and I think it is much more staged than it was when it started. Because let me tell you, Teresa's table flip changed reality television. You cannot convince me otherwise. I have never wanted to flip a table more. Like, wow.
No, I mean,
I love Teresa, even though she's a very complex figure.
yeah, some tough times, but it's all right. She put on a great show for us. She put on a great show for me. I know all about it. And it's just one of my second favorite is probably Atlanta, but then Orange County. And then I've never really seen New York, but those are the main three that I've seen. I've honestly, genuinely watched so much of The Real Housewives just because my mom was there sitting there and I'd be sitting there with her and I'd just be incensed.
That's how I started watching it.
Like
Yeah.
it just kind of happened. I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. People throwing tables around. I was like, this is crazy. But Kimberly, last question here. I do this at the end of every episode. What are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, and even the legal professionals out there in the world?
Honestly, whenever I hear about words of wisdom, I think about the three sayings that I was raised on. There are some people in my life who are probably tired of hearing the story, but I don't care because it literally formed me into the person I am today. So growing up every day before school, dad and mom would have me say three things before I could get out of the vehicle. And I had to say, I will be a leader by my example and an example by my behavior. If there's a problem, I will adapt, improvise, and overcome. And if I have to eat a turd, I won't nibble at it. um, and so that has molded, I guess, my mindset in ways that I didn't understand until I was in my 20s and going through some really dark times. And I just realized like how much more resilient those sayings helped me be. And that's coming from someone where I don't particularly think I'm like the strongest person. But I thank my parents a lot for having me say that. And so that's what I would say to everyone else, those three things.
I mean, that's a fantastic piece of advice. As my father would say, when the tough get going, they go and get tough. So you just got to get through it. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yep.
It's so beautiful. It's a long life. Enjoy it, everyone, please. But that's the episode. That's the podcast. Kimber Marie, thank you so much for coming on here, spreading your wisdom, spreading your experiences, and for everyone out there listening, subscribe.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
no, you're good. You're good. I appreciate
I
the
was just gonna say thank you. Go for it.
But before I end, check out lawyersinthemaking.substack.com, lawyersinthemaking one word.substack.com, and I will see you in the next one.